Hi, this is Imaduddin. So if you're aware, I have a platform called IFRSmasterclass.com for training. Analytic Consulting Private Limited for IFRS Consulting, and now we have recently formed a company, Fyinancial OS LLC, in the US, which is aimed at IFRS automation. And the big vision that we have, which you can see here on our website, is basically to automate your entire IFRS compliant financial reporting. So this is a big vision indeed. And as technology progresses, we are heading towards that place. But our approach is modular. So our first module, as you probably know, is about IFRS 16 lease accounting. And so in our pipeline, in our roadmap, there are more tools incoming, inshallah. There will be IFRS 9 ECL modeling for receivables portfolios. There would be IFRS 15. There would be tools on consolidation. And the end goal is that eventually your entire IFRS compliant financial reporting should be automated such that all your journal entries, which are IFRS compliant, and all your disclosure notes are prepared automatically. So let's go deep into this particular tool, which is IFRS 16 lease accounting. And this, which we believe is probably the most powerful tool on lease accounting that exists. And that's because it automates lease accounting end to end, which means it also automates modifications, reassessments, ad hoc payments, and so many other complexities because it has been built with IFRS expertise at top of it. And so as an IFRS expert myself, as I have supervised the entire process, the idea was to make it as deeply correct and accurate and compliant with IFRS 16 as possible. And therefore, we are also eventually offering free audit support and free migration services to our system, which means you would not have any worry about whether this complies with your auditors, because we would be answering the questions about how the system handles your specific leases in specific cases. So let's have a quick overview of the system. If you look at the top bar, the menu bar, you can see that there's a company selector where you can select which company in the group you want to account for, or which lease you want to see. So if you go to ABC Holdings, we do not have any leases for the lessee. We have some leases for the lessor. And so we can go back to Elect, where we have both the lessor and lessee leases. And so all the reporting, everything that you see on this platform would reflect what we have chosen, the company or the entity we have chosen here. Similarly, we can see there is a reporting period selector. We can select any reporting period, month ended, quarter ended, 6-month ended, and we can either generate combined journal entries or for 6 months, or we can, let's say, generate monthly entries for each of the single 6 months. So we'll see how those journal entries work in a bit, but first let's come down to the place where we have financial reporting, payment tracker, lease documentation, user access, and reporting entities. So in the financial reporting section, what you get is all the IFRS 16 compliant disclosure notes, which you would be placing on your financial statements. So it's a bit rich, but it actually tells you everything about all the leases that you've uploaded here. We have separate notes for lessees and separate for lessor, because IFRS 16 requirements for our disclosure notes are different for both the lessee and the lessor. The reporting period, as you can see, is reflected that we selected, which is 6-month ended April 30, 2026. And in the financial reporting section, the end result is also that we can download this disclosure report. We can also download the journal entries of all the leases. Additionally, if you want, we can integrate this entire lease app into your ERP, Oracle or SAP or Microsoft Dynamics. And all of that would be a separate service and will be discussed separately with our IT team, just to make sure that the entire workflow is automated. But if you want, you can always use it as a separate app, as a separate web app. And so you can export these entries and upload them directly into your ERPs. We have an advanced functionality here, which is called Payment Tracker, which means you can track all your payments. If you have some payment received, you can manually enter here, or you can automatically integrate it based on our IT provided services. However, it doesn't end here. Let's say if your contracts have some late payment penalties or overdue interest, those can also be accounted for here based on our Payment Tracker section. And then we can also waive or modify certain amounts that have actually been paid. And so all of these waivers or adjustment would be recorded in adjustment history. And so you will have full audit trail of all the imperfections that you can see in your lease payment process. And so we have similarly the payment tracker works for both the lessee and lessor leases. For lessor, we are receiving these payments, and for the lessee, we are paying these payments. Then we have a lease documentation section where you can upload all your leases to keep an archive. We have a user and access section where you can give your users access to your app. And so you can define in what company, what access do you want? You want them to give them payments, only access, the reviewer access, preparer access, manager access, or admin access. All these things are defined as to what kind of access do they have. But in short, payments only person would only see the payment section. The preparer would be able to make changes, but would not be able to apply changes. So these would be, waiting in a queue for the manager or admin to approve. And so all of these access can be provided based on your own control systems. Then we have reporting entities, which means you can add as many entities that you have in your group. And again, as you have seen already, this entity selector will decide which leases do you see, which accounting data do you see based on which reporting entity does it belong to. And so now let's go a little deeper into a single lease. So we have some test leases here just to test all the edge cases that could possibly exist. And so we can see there is an amortization schedule. We can see there's a journal entries section. There's a modification section which will come into in a bit. We have a lease details section, and we have a monthly ledger section or monthly movement section. Let me just show you the lease details page. So this is what we input in our input form. So just to make this, just to not make this video very boring for you, I'm not inputting every single detail here. Just to quickly go through this entire form, you will see what kind of information is expected and what kind of options does it handle. So first we have some general information. We have dates and terms. We have payment details, the frequency, discount rate, arrears or advance payments, and the discount rate basis as well. And then we have some advanced functionalities like if there are any variable payments, if there is any escalation, let's say every year your lease payments increase by the inflation rate, or let's say every year your lease payments increase by a fixed percentage, all of these options can be incorporated within this lease tool. Then there are some IFRS 16 specific adjustments, for example, initial dry costs, restoration obligations, prepaid rent at commencement. All these things would usually, for example, restoration obligation or prepaid rent would affect the right of use asset, but not affect the lease liability. But restoration obligation should also be treated separately as an obligation as a liability under IS 37. Then there are lease incentive receipts. So all these adjustments are possible. Then we have guarantees and options. So whatever residual value guarantee you define, that would be handled by the system. Additionally, you can have all the possible options under IFRS 16. So there could be an extension option, there could be a purchase option, there could be a termination option. And when that option is exercised and at what price, you can input that data here, and it would incorporate all that into the lease liability that is calculated for the amortization schedule. Then we have ad hoc payments. So even if there are some random payments at random times, you can incorporate that into lease liability as well, assuming that these are contractually predefined. And then there are late payment penalties and charges. So this is again an optional or an advanced feature. If your contract requires some late payment fee or some overdue interest and overdue payments, then that can also be incorporated here. Then again, as the very basic thing, if your lease is a short-term lease or a low-value asset, then this would be treated entirely differently as an operating lease. Additionally, at the time of migration, if your current balances differ from what we calculated, for example, if your previous calculations were slightly flawed, you can simply input your previous balances here, and based on what we have right now, it will calculate the difference and will also suggest a correcting entry, assuming the error are immaterial. For obviously material errors, the effect should be retrospective, and for policy differences, the effect should be retrospective. But you can discuss with your auditors whether you can, if there are slight minor changes because of estimation differences, then estimation changes are not required to be effectuated from retrospectively, they can be applied prospectively. So we can help you with determining what kind of change you need. And okay, so let's go back to the amortization schedule. This is what we have based on all the information that has been put in there. So this is the present value of all the lease liability, and we incur interest, we make payment, and there's a closing liability, and we also have a movement for right of use asset. And all of these things are reflected in the journal entries, as you can see here. And these journal entries are monthly and for 6 months because we chose that period. However, there's one advanced feature which I told you about, which is a lease modification. So what this really is under IFRS 16, there could be certain kinds of modifications. There could be a scope increase modification that is treated as a separate lease. There is a scope increase modification which is not proportionate to the price. The increase in scope of the asset, for example, is not proportionate to the price of that asset, and so it is not treated as a separate lease. It's treated as a modification. Then there are other modifications, and there are scope decrease modifications. So based on any modification that your leases might have gone through, you can select an option here, and based on that option, it will treat the entire lease modification automatically without you having to input the data again, without you having to make a separate schedule, without you having to do anything manually. Similarly, the option, we also have an option for reassessment, which means if, for example, you initially thought that the lease would have an extension option exercised, and now you're saying that it would not be exercised. So you can reassess your assumptions based on the existing contract, which had not gone through modification. And the key difference that under reassessment is the discount rate remains the same. So let's say we have a scope decrease modification, and originally our lease payments were 4,000 per period, and let's say the discount rate has changed now to 7%, 8% or 9%, and our lease, let's say the scope has decreased by 50%. So let's say your floor space was 1,000 square feet, now it reduced to 500 square feet. It was some asset, the asset has been reduced to half. So the scope has been reduced to half, and the payment has been reduced slightly more than half. So this half of 4,000 would have been 2,000, it's now 2,500. So, and based on, and there could be a ton of more modification options we have that you can input based on, for example, if there are any one-off payments, if there are any escalation options and all those things. Escalation setting could also be input here, and you can apply your notes here. So based on all the modification data we have input, we can apply that modification. And RVG has been reduced to 0 from 25, I think 6,500. And based on all this data, you can see that in the amortization schedule, we have a modification adjustment row. And in that row, you can see that the lease liability has reduced from 34,000 and something to 18,894. And you can see that your right of use asset has reduced from 37,000 something to 18,000 something, which is exactly the 50% decrease. And you can please note that this is a mid-period adjustment. Something randomly happened on April 12th. But the system is so accurate that it actually reduced or amortized the lease liability to 0 at the end of the term, because the new IVG was now 0. And it has also amortized the entire right of use asset to 0. So you can be satisfied with the accuracy of the system. By the way, we also provide pilot program where you can test this tool before you finally subscribe for it. And once you subscribe for it, it's an annual subscription based on the number of leases that you have. Furthermore, you can see that this modification is now also reflected in the journal entries because this modification happened on 12th of April in our particular data we input. You can see the journal entries for April. We can see there's an other entity entries section where we can see that this lease liability, which has reduced by 15,000, this right of use asset, which has decreased by 18,000, and there's a loss on lease modification of 2,870, which is reflected in the journal entry. This same loss is also reflected in the monthly ledger or monthly movements. So you can see this is a very powerful place where you can see the monthly movement for each individual lease. So that, for example, auditors can perfectly audit your lease based on each month's monthly movement. So have a look at this, for example, in the month of April 2026, we can see that there's a lease modification appearing here for the lease liability, which is a decrease of 15,892, and we also have a decrease of 18,753 for the right of use asset. And the gain or loss is recognized in profit or loss. Remember, the gain or loss is recognized for a modification when there's a decrease in the scope, but in case of other modifications, it's usually not recognized because the effect on liability and asset is considered the same. But there's a more technical advanced topic here. But what you need to know is that our system knows what to do, and based on the type of modification you choose, it will correctly apply the right treatment. And if you go back to the financial reporting section, you can also see that in the movement of lease liability, there is a modification of 15,882, which means that modification has reflected in our financial statement disclosures as well. So this is a quick review of the system that we created. The idea was to have all the complex logic, all the deep IFRS insights embedded into the system such that you don't have to worry about how to account for something, you don't have to make manual adjustment. You don't have to worry about how to, reconcile everything into a single disclosure note. Everything is done for you here. All you need to do is just call us or book a demo with us. Our team, our accounting team, which is expert in this particular tool, will actually migrate all your leases free of cost to the system, and they will provide audit support when auditors have questions. And they will also configure the accounting entries that this system inputs uh, in a way that corresponds to the right GL code in your system based on coordination with your team. And so the idea is to reduce the friction for you completely. And on top of it, if you want a complete two-way integration with your ERP, we have a solid ID team which have worked with large organizations, have probably 50 years of combined experience. And when you work with them, you would know what I'm talking about. So this is a comprehensive system, and this is just the beginning. Inshallah, we'll be providing or creating more systems like IFRS 9 initial modeling for receivables, IFRS 15 consolidation. And so the idea is to have all things in one place, all the IFRS compliance reporting in one place, such that when we introduce our more advanced agents, they can work for you using all these tools, which have all these hard and complex logics embedded into the code itself. So this is a quick comprehensive review of the system. If you want to learn more, just DM me, contact me via LinkedIn, or you can go to fyinancial.com and book a demo where we will just try to understand what are your current challenges, what are your current lease scenarios, and whether our system and how our system can help you in relieving your current pain. And from there onwards, we can go into conversation with your IT team and other people who might be involved in decision making and help you finalize this subscription. Thank you. I really appreciate you took the time to review this tool with me, and looking forward to staying in touch. Have a great day.